I woke up this morning to an email with the subject line, "I didn't lose my temper, I just lost my wife." It was sent by a subscriber named Michael. Now, usually the stories we get here follow a pattern. Someone cheats, there's a screaming match, and someone gets kicked out. But Michael's story is different. It's calculated. It's cold. Michael is a 52-year-old retired American executive living in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. He thought he was living the Malaysia my second home dream. Luxury condo, amazing food, and a stunning younger wife named Susan. But that dream dissolved on a rainy Tuesday night when the Royal Malaysia Police showed up at his door investigating a brutal assault that he allegedly committed. What followed wasn't a crime of passion, but a masterclass in financial and social warfare. Michael told me, "In the corporate world, you don't scream at your competitors. You audit them until they cease to exist." I just applied that same logic to my marriage. If you love stories about intricate, scorched-earth revenge where the good guy wins by playing the long game, you're going to want to hear this one. Do me a huge favor. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us find more stories like this. All right, let's get into it. Here is Michael's story in his own words. I always tell people back in the States that retiring in Kuala Lumpur is the closest thing you can get to living like a king on a commoner's budget. It's not just the exchange rate, it's the lifestyle. I'm 52, retired from a career in logistics software in Chicago, and for the last 4 years, I've been living in Mont Kiara. If you don't know KL, Mont Kiara is where the expats live. It's a bubble of international schools, organic grocers, and high-rise condos that look like spaceships. I bought a unit at the Saini, private lift lobby, view of the Petronas Towers, the works. I had a net worth of about $4 million US, which in Malaysia makes you virtually untouchable. Or so I thought. Then there was Susan. I met Susan 3 years ago. She was 34, a local real estate agent, and absolutely stunning. Sharp, ambitious, and she knew exactly how to navigate the high society of KL. I'm not naive. I knew the dynamic. I was the Ong Mo, the white guy with the wallet, and she was the trophy. But we had a deal, unspoken as it was. I provided the security and the status. She provided the companionship and the social calendar. I genuinely loved her. She was fiery and funny, and she made me feel young again. She was obsessed with face, reputation. She wanted to be seen with the Datin Saris and the Tai Tais, the wealthy ladies of leisure who spent their afternoons eating high tea at the Mandarin Oriental. I funded that life. I was happy to do it. But the humidity here does funny things to people. It makes you slow, comfortable, and blind. It all came crashing down on a Tuesday in November. It was monsoon season, and if you've never seen a tropical storm in Southeast Asia, it's violent. The rain was hammering against the floor-to-ceiling windows of our living room like gravel. I was home, sitting on the sofa with my laptop, watching the U.S. markets open. It was about 11:30 p.m. Susan wasn't home. She had told me she was at a networking event for her real estate firm at the W Hotel downtown. She said these things often ran late. Drinks, potential clients, closing deals. I trusted her. I had no reason not to. Then the doorbell rang. It wasn't the security guard. It was the PDRM, the Royal Malaysia Police. I opened the door to find 2 officers standing there. They weren't the friendly community cops you see in movies. These guys looked tired, stern, and soaking wet. "In sick, Michael?" the older one asked. He didn't wait for an answer. "Do you own a silver Porsche Macan? License plate, VHM 8888? "Yes," I said, confused. "That's my wife's car. It's in my name, but she drives it. Is she okay? Was there an accident?" The officers exchanged a look. "Sir, we need you to answer some questions regarding an incident that occurred 1 hour ago in Bukit Bintang." "An incident?" "A severe assault," the officer said, his hand resting near his belt. "A man named Darren Tan was beaten unconscious in the parking basement of the Pavilion Mall. Witnesses identified your vehicle speeding away from the scene. The victim claims he was attacked by a large foreign man." My stomach dropped. Not because I was guilty, but because the pieces didn't fit. "Officer, that's impossible," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I haven't left this condo since 4 p.m. I've been here all night." The victim was very specific, sir, the officer countered. He said a big Onmo attacked him, and your car was seen on CCTV exiting the barrier gate right after the assault. I stood there barefoot on my expensive marble floors, realizing two things simultaneously. First, my wife was not at a networking event at the W Hotel. Second, I was being framed for a crime I physically couldn't have committed. Where is your wife now, sir? I don't know, I stammered. We need you to come to the station, the officer said. Just then, the lift doors opened directly into my foyer. Susan walked in. She was wearing a cocktail dress, but she looked like she'd been through a war. Her mascara was running. Her hair was frizzy from the humidity, and she was trembling. She froze when she saw the police. She didn't look at me with concern. She didn't ask what was happening. She looked at the police, and then she looked at me with a terrified, guilty realization that had nothing to do with my safety and everything to do with her own survival. Susan, I asked. The officer turned to her. Hewen, were you driving the Porsche Macan tonight? The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush the breath out of me. That was the moment my marriage didn't just end, it died. I looked at the two police officers, then at my wife, then back at the officers. The tension in the room was so thick you could have cut it with a jagged spoon. Gentlemen, I said, channeling every ounce of corporate patience I had left from my days managing software rollouts. There seems to be a significant misunderstanding. You said the attacker was a large foreign man? The older officer, whose name tag read Sergeant Razak, squinted at me. He looked me up and down. Now, I'm 6'2", and thanks to 4 years of retirement and Malaysia's incredible food scene, I'm carrying a solid dad bod. I'm not exactly Jason Bourne. I'm more like Jason Bourne's accountant who enjoys weekends on the couch. Yes, sir. Victim described a large Caucasian male. Okay, I said, gesturing to my attire. I was wearing a faded Chicago Cubs t-shirt and a pair of baggy cotton pajama bottoms. Unless I beat a man unconscious in the last hour and then sprinted home to change into my sleeping clothes and order Indian food, I think you have the wrong guy. I pulled out my phone and opened the Grab app, the Uber of Southeast Asia. Here, I said, shoving the screen towards Sergeant Razak. Grab food history. Delivered at 8:45 p.m. 2 orders of roti canai, 1 chicken curry, and a teh tarik, less sugar. Delivered to the lobby. You can check with the security guards downstairs. They verify every delivery. I haven't left the building. The younger female officer finally spoke up. Can we see the condo CCTV? Please, I said. Be my guest. We took the elevator down to the security control room. Susan stayed upstairs, claiming she felt faint. I didn't push it. I wanted her away from the police anyway, until I figured out what the hell was going on. The security room was freezing cold and smelled faintly of curry puffs. The head guard, a sharp Nepalese guy named Dinesh, who I tipped generously every Christmas, jumped up when we entered. Mr. Michael, everything okay? Show the officers the footage from the main gate between 7 p.m. and now, Dinesh. It took about 30 seconds to clear my name. The footage was in 4K resolution. It showed my silver Porsche rolling out of the complex at 7:15 p.m. The windows were tinted, but the driver lowered the window to tap the access card. It wasn't a large foreign man. It was Susan. Beautiful, perfectly made up Susan, looking stressed even then. Then, we pulled up the lobby footage. There was me at 8:45 p.m., shuffling down in my slippers to collect my curry from the delivery rider. I waved at the camera. I looked about as threatening as a golden retriever. Sergeant Razak sighed. The adrenaline of the bust was fading, replaced by the annoyance of paperwork. Okay, sir, you were home, but your car was definitely at the scene, and your wife was driving it. We went back up to the penthouse. Susan was sitting on the edge of the sofa, clutching a glass of water like it was a holy relic. When we walked in, she looked like a deer caught in the headlights of the very Porsche she'd been driving. Hewen, Sergeant Razak said, his voice softer now, but still firm. We know you were driving the car. Did you see who attacked Mr. Darrington? Susan's eyes darted to me, then to the floor. I don't know, she whispered. I was just giving him a ride. We were discussing a property listing in a parking lot. Then a man came out of nowhere. He He was wearing a motorcycle helmet. He smashed the window. I panicked. I just drove away. You left the victim there? The female officer asked, raising an eyebrow. I was scared. Susan cried, the tears starting to flow. I thought it was a robbery. I thought they were going to kill me. The cops bought it, barely. In KL, motorcycle robbers are a known bogeyman. It was plausible enough to get them out of my living room. They took a statement, warned us that the car would need to be photographed for the investigation, and finally left. The moment the heavy wooden door clicked shut, the air in the apartment changed. The panic evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard silence. I walked over to the dry bar and poured myself a double whiskey. I didn't offer her one. So, I said, taking a sip and turning to face her. Darren Tan, is he looking to buy a penthouse? Or were you discussing the fluctuating market of adultery? Susan flinched. Michael, please. Don't Michael. Please me, Susan. You told the cops you were discussing a listing. In a basement parking lot. At 10:30 at night. With the engine running. I laughed. A dry, humorless sound. I was born at night, honey, but not last night. Who is he? She looked at me, assessing her options. She realized the networking event, lie was dead. She realized the innocent ride, lie was dead. He's a friend, she said weakly. A friend you meet in basements. He's an investor, she blurted out. He does crypto. He's very successful. I almost laughed out loud. Of course. It had to be a crypto bro. In Kuala Lumpur, if a guy is 30, drives a rented supercar, and wears loafers without socks, he's a crypto investor. How long? I asked. She hesitated. I saw her hand go to her neck, her tell. A few weeks. Susan, I said, my voice dropping an octave. I'm going to check the mileage on the Porsche. I'm going to check the toll records. I'm going to audit this marriage like it's a failing subsidiary. Do you really want to lie to me right now? She crumbled. 8 months, she sobbed. It's been 8 months. I nodded slowly. 8 months. While I was planning our anniversary trip to Japan. While I was paying for her mother's knee surgery. And tonight, I asked. The police said a large foreign man beat him up. You said it was a guy in a helmet. Which is it? Susan wiped her eyes, her mascara smearing across her cheek like war paint. It wasn't a foreigner, Michael. Darren was confused. He got hit so hard. He was dazed. He probably just saw the car and assumed it was you. So who was it? I pressed. Who hates your boyfriend enough to ambush him in a parking lot? It was a biker, she said, her voice trembling. He pulled up on an old Honda EX5. He didn't ask for money. He didn't try to take my purse. He just dragged Darren out of the passenger seat and started beating him. He was shouting something in Cantonese. Cantonese? I asked. Yes. He was shouting about family and honor. I paused. A biker. An old Honda EX5. Cantonese shouting about honor. A strange, sinking feeling hit me. I walked over to the window and looked out at the rain-soaked skyline of Kuala Lumpur. Susan, I said without turning around. Did the biker have a sticker on his helmet? A red sticker that says Chera's Motorsports. I heard her sharp intake of breath behind me. Ow, how did you know that? I closed my eyes. I knew exactly who the attacker was. And the irony was, he was probably the only person in this entire city who actually respected me. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay in the guest bedroom listening to Susan snore. It's amazing how well the guilty sleep once they've offloaded their confession onto someone else. Meanwhile, I was staring at the ceiling fan, connecting the dots between a beatdown in a parking lot and a mechanic in Chera's. The next morning, I waited for Susan to leave for work. She tried to act normal, making a big show of brewing coffee, but she was jittery. She looked like a cat that had knocked over a vase and was waiting for the broom. Once she was gone, I didn't call a lawyer. Not yet. I grabbed my car keys, not for the Porsche, which was currently technically a crime scene, but for my daily driver, a Volvo XC90, the most responsible car in the world. I punched Ray's Auto Workshop into Waze and headed for Chera's. For those of you who don't know Kuala Lumpur, the geography is a class system. Mont Kiara, where I live, is clean, expensive, and filled with international schools and French bakeries. Chera's is the complete opposite. It's loud, chaotic, and authentic. It's where the real KL lives. It's also where traffic goes to die. 45 minutes later, I pulled up to a row of shop houses that looked like they hadn't been painted since the British left in '57. The air smelled of exhaust fumes, frying oil, and cheap cigarettes. Techno music was blasting at a volume that made my teeth vibrate. There, crouched next to a modified Honda Civic that was lowered so much it was practically scraping the asphalt, was Raymond. Raymond is Susan's older brother. He's 36, skinny, covered in grease, and usually has a cigarette dangling from his lip like an extra limb. Susan is embarrassed by him. She tells her high society friends he's in automotive engineering. In reality, Raymond fixes suspensions for street racers. I stepped out of the Volvo. I stuck out like a sore thumb, a tall American guy in a polo shirt standing amidst a sea of greasy spare parts. "Ray," I called out. Raymond slid out from under the Civic on a creeper board. He wiped his hands on a rag, stood up, and grinned. He was wearing the helmet. Not on his head, but sitting on the workbench next to him. It had the red Cheras Motorsports sticker on the side. "Michael," he shouted over the techno music. "What you doing here, bro? Susan sent you to scold me about my fingernails again." "Turn the music down, Ray. We need to talk." He saw the look on my face. He signaled to one of his workers to kill the noise. The silence that followed was jarring. "You want a Tarek?" he asked, reaching for a packet of cigarettes. "Are you on the Almo coffee?" "I have Nescafe. I want to know about the Pavilion Mall parking lot," I said. "Last night, 10:30 p.m. Raymond froze. The lighter in his hand hovered halfway to his cigarette. He looked at me. Then he looked at his workers. Then he jerked his head toward the back office. "Come inside." The office was a small glass box filled with unpaid invoices and calendar girls from 2015. Raymond sat on a plastic stool and finally lit his cigarette. He took a long drag and exhaled a cloud of smoke that would have set off a fire alarm in Chicago instantly. "So," he said, not looking at me. "She told you." She told me she was giving a client a ride. She told me a random biker attacked him. She didn't tell me it was her brother. Raymond scoffed. "Client? That guy's a toy boy. A gigolo. I see them 2 weeks ago at the Mammoth stall in Bangsar. Eating roti like lovers. Feeding each other. Disgusting. So you stalk them?" "I protect the family name Michael." Raymond slammed his hand on the desk. "My sister, she thinks she's high class now. She think because she marry you, she's Queen of England. But she forget her roots. She forget honor." He looked at me, his eyes surprisingly intense. "You know, Michael, when Ma needed the hip operation, Susan say too expensive, use government hospital. You write the check. You didn't ask question. You treat Ma like your own mother. You're a good man. Maybe you too soft. Maybe you watch too much Netflix, but you were a good man." I couldn't help but smile slightly at the too much Netflix jab. "So you decided to beat him up?" "I didn't want to beat him," Raymond shrugged, as if discussing a minor fender bender. "I just want to scare him. I knock on window. I say, 'Oi, stay away from married woman.' But this guy, this Darren, he opened the door and tried to push me. He called me Rimpit, street thug. So, I give him the chair's handshake. 'You broke his nose, Ray.' He has soft face." Ray defended himself. "Not my fault." He screamed like a girl. Then Susan screamed. Then she drive off like a maniac. Left her boyfriend on the floor. Cold-hearted, that woman. I tell you, Michael, we have same blood, but different heart. Why'd he tell the cops it was a large foreign man? I asked. "You're 5'7", Ray." Raymond laughed. A hacking smoker's laugh. It was dark, and I wear my riding jacket, the padded one with the shoulder armor. Look very big. Plus, he see your Porsche. His brain go, "Oh no, the husband is here." He probably pissed his pants thinking it was you. He projected his fear, La. I sat back in the creaky office chair. This was the absurdity of my life. My wife was cheating on me with a crypto bro named Darren, and her grease monkey brother had assaulted him out of a twisted sense of loyalty to me. "Police are looking for the biker," I said quietly. "Let them look," Ray said, flicking ash onto the floor. CCTV in parking lot is dark. Plate number covered with mud. Accidentally, of course. Helmet visor down. No face, no case. "They traced the Porsche to me, Ray." Ray winced. "Sorry about that, bro. I didn't think she would be stupid enough to use your car to cheat. That one is on her stupidity, not my skill." He leaned forward. So what you gonna do? You gonna divorce her? I don't know yet. I lied. I knew exactly what I was going to do. Good. Ray nodded. If you need help moving your stuff out, tell me. I have a lorry. I give you family discount. Free of charge. I stood up and extended my hand. Raymond looked at his grease-stained palm, then wiped it vigorously on his pants before shaking mine. Thanks, Ray. For, the honor thing. No problem. He grinned, revealing a chipped tooth. But next time, you handle your own wife, okay? My knuckles hurt. I walked back to my Volvo feeling lighter than I had in 24 hours. I had gone to Cheras looking for a villain, and I'd found the only other person in Kuala Lumpur who seemed to give a damn about me. Now I just had to figure out how to destroy Darren Tan and my wife without getting Raymond arrested. Fortunately, while Raymond used his fists, I had something much more dangerous, a spreadsheet. When I returned from Raymond's workshop, I didn't scream. I didn't throw Susan's clothes off the balcony, even though the visual of her Gucci loafers raining down on the Mont Kiara traffic was tempting. Instead, I initiated what psychologists call the gray rock method. Basically, I became as interesting and reactive as a piece of unpolished granite. When Susan asked where I'd been, I said errands. When she tried to ask if I was still mad about the motorcycle robbery, I said, I'm processing. I moved my pillows into the guest room, claiming my back was acting up. For the next 3 days, I was the most boring roommate on earth. I watched documentaries about fungal networks. I reorganized the pantry by expiration date. Susan, on the other hand, was frantic. She was in full damage control mode. She started love-bombing me. Suddenly, there were fresh-cut orchids on the table. She bought my favorite expensive imported steaks. She even offered to watch Band of Brothers with me, a show she had previously described as 10 hours of men walking in dirt. She thought she was winning me back. She didn't realize she was just feeding the enemy while he sharpened his bayonet. While she was busy performing the role of the devoted wife, I was locked in my office performing a forensic audit of our life. I pulled up the statements for the supplementary Platinum American Express card I had given her. I had always just auto-paid the bill, assuming the charges were for groceries, petrol, or the occasional facial. I was wrong. I was paying for the Darren Tan lifestyle package. The spreadsheet told a story that was almost impressive in its audacity. Item 1. RM 3500 at Digital Valley. A high-end gaming laptop. I assumed Darren needed that for his crypto mining. Item 2. RM 12,000 at the Hourglass. A Tag Heuer watch. Susan had told me she bought it for her dad's birthday. I remember thinking, wow, Ray's wrist is going to look fancy while he changes oil filters. Turns out, Ray never got a watch. Darren did. Item 3. RM 4,500 at Musclemania. That is an obscene amount of whey protein. Unless Darren was building a house out of amino acids, he was reselling this stuff. I summed up the column. In 8 months, Susan had funneled about RM 150,000, roughly 35,000 US dollars, of my retirement money into this guy's pockets. I wasn't just a cuckold. I was an angel investor. I needed a shark. I made an appointment with Madam Chong. If you need a divorce in Kuala Lumpur and you want to leave the other person crying in a gutter, you go to Madam Chong. She's a 60-year-old Chinese woman who operates out of a freezing cold office in Mid-Valley. She wears Chanel suits, has hair sprayed into a helmet of iron, and terrified me within 10 seconds of meeting her. I laid out the facts: the cheating, the fake robbery, the assault by the brother, and the financial drain. Madam Chong adjusted her glasses and looked at my spreadsheet. She didn't offer tea. She offered violence. Mr. Michael, she said, her voice crisp. In Malaysia, since you're a non-Muslim, we fall under the Law Reform Act. Adultery is good for grounds of divorce, but it does not automatically mean you keep all the money. Courts like to split things. I have offshore trusts, I said. Everything I own, the portfolio, the cash, sits in a trust in the Cook Islands established 5 years before I met Susan. Madam Chong smiled. It was the smile of a predator watching a wounded gazelle. Excellent. Then she gets nothing from the capital, but she will ask for maintenance. She will say she has become accustomed to a lifestyle. She will say you are the provider. She provided RM 150,000 of my money to her boyfriend. I countered. That Madam Chong tapped the paper is our weapon. We don't just sue for divorce. We threatened to sue for misappropriation of funds and fraud. We frame the gifts not as marital spending, but as theft. If she fights for alimony, we file a police report for criminal breach of trust regarding the credit cards. Can we actually do that? We can certainly threaten it, she winked. But we need proof. Real proof. Not just credit card bills. We need to link the money to the boyfriend explicitly. Do you have her phone? No. She sleeps with it under her pillow. Does she have an iPad? Yes. It's in the kitchen. She uses it for recipes. Go home, Madam Chong commanded. Get the chats. I want to see them laughing about your money. If we have that, she won't just lose the divorce. She'll lose her face. And in this town, face is worth more than ringgit. I went home. It was 2 p.m. Susan was at work. I found the iPad in the kitchen drawer, sticky with flour from her sudden interest in baking. I prayed she hadn't changed the passcode. I punched in 1111. It unlocked. God bless the technologically illiterate. I opened WhatsApp. It synced with her phone. I scrolled past her family chat, past the Datin ladies group, and found Darren Rocket. Reading the text was a form of self-flagellation, but I needed to do it. Darren, baby, the watch is fire. My boys are so jealous. Did the old man notice the charge? Susan, don't worry. The ATM doesn't check the small stuff. He's too busy organizing his garage. God, he's so boring. He talked for 20 minutes about logistics supply chains last night. I wanted to scream. Darren, just hang in there. Once we get the seed capital for the crypto project, you can leave him. Susan, I know. I just need to tolerate the wrinkly skin a little longer. Love you. The ATM. Wrinkly skin. I took screenshots of everything. I exported the chat history. I felt a cold knot in my chest. It wasn't heartbreak anymore. Heartbreak implies you still have hope. This was just clarity. I realized then that Susan didn't hate me. Hate requires passion. She just viewed me as a utility. I was a human appliance. I was a refrigerator that dispensed cash and occasionally needed maintenance. I forwarded the file to my secure email and to Madam Chong. Then I deleted the evidence of the transfer from the iPad and put it back in the drawer. When Susan came home that evening, she was beaming. Michael, I got us tickets to the Philharmonic on Saturday. I know you love classical music. I looked at her. I looked at the face of a woman who had called me the ATM to a man wearing a watch I paid for. That sounds great, honey. I lied, smiling for the first time in days. But actually, I was thinking we should go to your big launch event on Friday first. I want to support your career. Susan's eyes lit up. She had been begging me to go to this launch for weeks. A new luxury condo development called the Zenith. All her VIP clients would be there. She wanted me there to play the role of the rich, successful American husband to boost her credibility. Really? She squealed. You'll come. Wouldn't miss it for the world, I said. I think it's time everyone sees exactly who you are. She hugged me, thinking she had won. I hugged her back, thinking about the tactical nuclear weapon I was about to detonate in a ballroom full of Kuala Lumpur's elite. In Asia, there's a concept known as face. It's hard to explain to my friends back in Chicago. It's not just reputation, it's a currency. It's your dignity, your social standing, and your credit score all rolled into one. For a woman like Susan, whose entire career was built on selling luxury condos to people with more money than sense, face was more valuable than oxygen. And I was about to suffocate her. Friday night arrived. The launch for the Zenith was held in the grand ballroom of the St. Regis. It was exactly the kind of event I hated. Freezing cold air conditioning, canapes the size of postage stamps, and people pretending to like jazz. Susan looked incredible, I have to admit. She was wearing a silver gown that shimmered like a caught fish. I knew exactly how much it cost because I had seen the charge on the supplementary card 3 days ago, RM 8,000. She had told me she borrowed it from a designer friend. Michael, darling, she chirped, linking her arm through mine as we entered the ballroom. I want you to meet Datin Sri Noor. She's looking for a penthouse for her third cat. I smiled. I shook hands. I played the role of the doting, retired American wallet. Charmed Datin. Yes, the market is fascinating. No, I don't play golf. I organize my garage. Susan kicked my shin gently under the table, a silent warning to stop being weird. The room was packed with the who's who of Kuala Lumpur. There were property tycoons, timber barons, and the Tai-Tais, wealthy wives who moved in a pack like wolves with Chanel bags. These were the women Susan desperately wanted to impress. They were the ones she had mocked in her text to Darren, calling them Botox gargoyles. Around 9 p.m., the speeches began. Susan's boss, a man named Mr. Lim who wore suits that were too shiny, took the stage to talk about lifestyle paradigms and vertical living. Now is the time, I whispered to myself. I excused myself, claiming I needed the restroom. Instead, I walked to the back of the room, near the open bar, and found a nice vantage point behind a massive ice sculpture of a swan. I pulled out my phone. I had spent the afternoon curating a distribution list. It was a masterpiece of social engineering. It included Mr. Lim, Susan's boss, the Golden Ladies WhatsApp group, Susan's core social circle, the Zenith client list which Susan had synced to her iPad, helpful soul that she is, and finally, a BCC to the email addresses of the investors Darren had been bragging about in the texts, men he was trying to solicit for his crypto fund. I opened the email draft. Subject line, urgent, due diligence report, Susan and Darren investment portfolio. Attached was a single PDF file. It contained the police report naming Susan as the driver of the car that fled the scene of the assault, the itemized list of gifts purchased with my money, labeled embezzlement audit, screenshots of the WhatsApp chats where she called her clients gullible sheep and her friends fake witches, and my personal favorite, a photo of Darren wearing the Tag Heuer watch, side by side with the credit card receipt in my name. My thumb hovered over the send button. I had the formal email ready for the investors, but I knew the real damage needed to be instant. So, I had also pasted the link into the Datton Ladies and office colleagues' WhatsApp groups. It's a strange feeling, holding a grenade in a room full of people drinking champagne. I pressed send on both. Then, I ordered a double Glenfiddich and waited. Digital warfare is silent, but the reaction is acoustic. It started about 30 seconds later. Ping. A phone chirped near the front of the stage. Ping. Ding. Vibrate. It rippled through the room like a wave. People reached into their clutches and pockets, bored by the speech, happy for the distraction. I watched Datton Sri Noor. She checked her phone. She frowned. She adjusted her glasses. Then, her eyes went wide. She turned to the woman next to her, who was also looking at her phone. They whispered. They looked at the stage where Susan was standing, clapping for her boss. Then, Mr. Lim's phone buzzed on the podium. He glanced at it, probably thinking it was an update on the catering. He stopped speaking mid-sentence. He scrolled. He looked up, scanned the room, and his eyes locked onto Susan. The murmur started. It wasn't a polite murmur. It was the sound of 100 scandals breaking at once. Susan, sensing the shift in energy, turned around. She saw her friends huddled in a circle, looking at their screens. She smiled nervously and walked toward them. Is everything okay? I heard her ask, her voice projecting over the low hum. Datton Sri Noor looked up. This woman was the queen bee of the social circle. She held up her phone, displaying the chat log, where Susan had called her a walking plastic surgery disaster. You think I look like a gargoyle, Susan? The Datton asked, her voice icy enough to freeze the humidity outside. Susan's face went white. What? No, I never. And you used your husband's retirement money to buy a watch for. Who is this? A boy, another woman asked, zooming in on the PDF. Disgusting. No class. Susan scrambled for her own phone. I saw her unlock it, read the notification, and almost drop the device. She looked around the room, panic setting in. She looked for an ally. She looked for her boss. Mr. Lim was already huddled with his PR team, pointing at Susan and making a cutthroat gesture. Then, she looked for me. I stepped out from behind the ice swan. I raised my glass of whiskey in a silent toast. She stared at me across the ballroom. There was no anger in her eyes anymore, just sheer, unadulterated shock. She realized then that the boring old man who organized his garage had just dismantled her entire life with the efficiency of a supply chain algorithm. I didn't make a scene. I didn't yell. I just took a sip of my drink, placed the glass on a passing waiter's tray, and walked out the double doors. Behind me, I could hear the distinct sound of a reputation shattering. It sounded a lot like high heels clicking on marble as someone tried to run away from the truth. As I stepped out into the humid Kuala Lumpur night, I checked my phone. One new message from Raymond. Bro, my friend showed me the PDF. You're a gangster. Respect. I smiled. The humidity didn't feel so oppressive anymore. In fact, the air felt incredibly fresh. The fallout from the ballroom incident was less of a battle and more of a cleanup operation. I didn't see Susan that night. She stayed at a friend's house, or maybe a cheap hotel. I didn't care to check to find my iPhone app. The next morning, I didn't wait for her to come groveling. I went straight to Madam Chong's office. Divorce in Malaysia usually drags on for years, especially when assets are involved. But when you have a viral PDF circulating among the city's elite that accuses your spouse of embezzlement, things tend to speed up. Susan's face wasn't just lost, it was obliterated. She couldn't walk into a high-end mall in Kuala Lumpur without feeling the phantom stares of the gossiping Andes. We met for the final settlement conference 2 weeks later. Susan brought a lawyer who looked like he had graduated from law school via a Zoom course the previous afternoon. She looked terrible. The glamour was gone, replaced by puffy eyes and a dress from H&M. Her lawyer tried to start with a speech about contributions to the marriage and emotional support. Madam Chong didn't even look up from her iPad. She just slid a single piece of paper across the table. This is a draft police report for criminal breach of trust under Section 409 of the Penal Code, Madam Chong said, her voice sounding like grinding metal. Misappropriation of funds entrusted to an agent. Maximum penalty is 20 years in prison and whipping. Susan's lawyer paled. Whipping applies to men. Actually, he mumbled. Fine, Madam Chong snapped. Just prison then. Your client spent RM 150,000 on luxury goods for a paramour using a supplementary card issued for household expenses. We are prepared to file this today unless she signs the mutual separation agreement. She gets her car. She gets her clothes. She gets zero alimony. She pays her own legal fees. Susan looked at me, tears welling up. Michael, please. I have nothing. Mr. Lim fired me. The Datins blocked my number. And Darren? I asked. She looked down. He blocked me too. He said I was bringing too much heat to his brand. His brand. I laughed. The guy sells imaginary coins, Susan. His brand is fraud. She signed the papers. I didn't feel a surge of triumph. I just felt the weight lift off my chest. The humidity that had been pressing down on me for months finally broke. In the end, the Mont Kiara meltdown, as my friend back in Chicago called it, actually turned a profit. I sold the condo at the Saini. Too many bad memories. I moved downtown, right near the Petronas Twin Towers. I got a penthouse with a private pool. It's smaller, but the view is better. As for Raymond, he was the only good investment I made in that entire family. I went back to the workshop in chairs a month after the divorce was finalized. Ray was under a car, as usual. Boss, he shouted when he saw me. I hear you are a free man. I am, Ray. I handed him an envelope. What is this? Wedding invitation? You marrying again already? Open it. He wiped his hands and tore it open. It was a cashier's check for RM 50,000. Michael, what is this? Consider a grant, I said, for a new hydraulic lift, and maybe some air conditioning for the office, and pay your workers a bonus. Ray looked at the check, then at me. He didn't cry. He's too cherished for that, but he nodded slowly. You are a good brother, Michael. Even if you're not my brother-in-law anymore. You are family. Just promise me one thing, Ray, I said. If I ever start dating a woman who cares more about Instagram than reality, you have my permission to hit me with a wrench. Deal, he grinned. So here I am. It's 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. I'm sitting at a 24-hour Mammoth stall, eating roti canai with my hands, sweating in the tropical heat, and watching the world go by. I'm single, I'm retired, and my bank account is secure offshore. I realized something important through all of this. Revenge isn't about screaming matches or slashing tires. True revenge is living so well and being so unbothered that the other person becomes nothing more than a funny story you tell strangers on the internet. Susan wanted a lifestyle she couldn't afford. Darren wanted a crypto empire he couldn't build. Me, I just wanted a quiet life and an organized garage. And now, finally, I have both. What do you guys think? Was Michael too harsh with a mass email at the party? Or did Susan get exactly what she deserved for spending his retirement money on a guy who wears loafers without socks? And shout out to Raymond, the real MVP of this story. We all need a Raymond in our corner. Let me know in the comments below what you would have done in Michael's shoes. Would you have exposed them or just walked away? If you enjoyed this story of calculated revenge and Malaysian justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the algorithm show this to more people. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching and stay safe out there.